Within all scientific fields, experiments are carried out to expand our knowledge and understanding of a particular process, and forensic science is no different, except these experiments can be somewhat strange and unorthodox. For most people, just thinking of a rotting dead body can turn their stomach, but a human corpse can in fact be a fantastic source of information due to the complex and vast ecosystem that emerges all on its own. While teaching forensic anthropology at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Dr. William Bass was awarded funding in 1987 to officially establish the University of Tennessee Anthropological Research Facility, the focus of which would be to closely study the decomposition process of human remains to develop methods to determine the time of death and the circumstances in which death occurred, knowledge which is critical for law enforcement conducting a death investigation. This research facility was the first of its kind anywhere in the world, where human cadavers could be left outdoors and observed in varying conditions across a 2.5-acre plot of land, hence the colloquial term of a body farm. But don't worry, people have to give informed consent for their body to be used for research at a facility like a body farm, in a similar way that you could donate your organs or skeleton for medical research. The donor bodies are closely studied as they go through the 5 physical stages of decomposition. First is the fresh stage, which occurs immediately after death, where the body retains a relatively unchanged appearance. The second is the bloat stage, when the body begins to fill with gas. Third is the active decay stage, when the body's soft tissue begins to break down and the skin begins to blacken. The fourth stage is advanced decay, where the remains become discoloured and blackened as the soft tissue continues to decay. The fifth and final stage is dry skeletal remains, which is when the remains have fully dried out and become skeletonized. Some of the conditions studied by students at the facility were situations like a body being locked in the trunk of a car, being submerged underwater, being buried at different depths, and being covered in various materials. The environment the body is in, and the length of time it is left there, will have an impact on the speed at which the human body goes through the stages of decomposition. The warmer the climate, the more quickly the body decays, particularly as certain bacteria, microorganisms, and even insects thrive and reproduce more quickly. There are now a total of 7 body farms throughout the United States, and other countries are slowly following. The Australian Facility for Taphonomic Experimental Research opened just outside of Sydney in 2016, while Canada opened their first body farm near Quebec in the summer of 2019. While the research coming from the North American body farms is a welcome contribution to the field of thanatology, or the scientific study of death and decomposition, the findings aren't exactly transferable to other countries and regions. A human body will decay differently depending on the environment and whether it is exposed to, as well as the native flora and fauna that all contributes to the decomposition process. This is why the body farm in Australia is so important, and they've already begun to publish some fascinating findings. First, a human body decaying in the southern hemisphere doesn't follow the same decomposition process as a body in the northern hemisphere, where the final result would be skeletonized remains. Instead, the process tends to fizzle out before it gets to the skeletonized state. The extreme hot and cold temperatures and particularly dry conditions that exist in parts of Australia mean that a body can mummify naturally without any human intervention. This is of particular importance to police and forensic investigators because the mummification process usually leaves some intact skin that has the potential to reveal details of injuries or identification indicators like tattoos. In 2020, scientist and researcher Alison Wilson released the findings of her study on the topic of post-mortem movement. The team at the Australian body farm used time-lapse cameras to capture the decomposition of a donor body every 30 minutes over a 17-month period. And during the early stages of decomposition, some movement can be expected, particularly when the ligaments begin to dry out. Her study confirmed the theory that post-mortem movement occurs in all limbs. What they weren't expecting to find is that the body continued to move throughout the duration of the study. In fact, most of the post-mortem movement occurred in the advanced decomposition stage, where the lower limbs were the most active. However, the anatomical structure that produced the most movement overall was the right styloid process of the radius, which is an attachment site for muscles and ligaments of the wrist, hand, and forearm. In total, the researchers found that it moved a total distance of 51.65 centimetres, which is quite significant. This type of research is truly groundbreaking, and once enough data has been collected, it should allow the scientists to develop a comprehensive protocol for the police to follow, and hopefully it can reduce the likelihood of post-mortem movement being misinterpreted. While body farms might sound horrific to some people, the research these facilities are producing is truly transforming the field of forensic science.